were buried in the Republican plot of Londonderry Cemetery.
There were scuffles with the police as the body of 19-year-old William Fleming was taken from his home. The IUC wanted to ensure that the coffin wasn't covered by the Irish tricolour, which is illegal in Northern Ireland. Support for the IRA in this staunchly Republican ghetto of the Cregan is undisputed. When the funeral of William Fleming and the other IRA man, Danny Doherty, converged, then came a chilling display of firepower. In the heart of the Cregan, the police were nowhere to be seen. The IRA's firing party quickly disappeared.
Then masked gunmen fired a volley of shots over the coffins.
Then they marched, carrying the coffins to the cemetery, and with them the message that even though 2 of their men were dead, the IRA have plenty more to replace them. Michael Macmillan, ITN in Northern Ireland.
Loyalist politicians have claimed the police were humiliated by the IRA's ability to fire a volley of automatic shots over the coffins on Saturday. A man detained after the incident has been released without charge. The IUC say a full report is being prepared for the Chief Constable.
The IRA fired a volley of shots over the coffin of Kieran Fleming, aged 25, who drowned in the River Bannock 3 weeks ago trying to escape to the Republic after a gun battle between the SAS and the IRA. Fleming was convicted of the murder of a reserve policewoman in 1976 and escaped from the Maze prison 15 months ago.
Police had laid virtual siege to the IRA man's home, obviously determined not to let the Provost stage a repeat of the paramilitary funeral they gave his cousin shot by the SAS 2 weeks ago. The almost inevitable trouble quickly exploded as police and mourners exchanged punches in the tiny alleyways outside Fleming's home in a small Republican housing estate in the heart of the Loyalist Waterside area of Londonderry. 2 policemen who were isolated from their colleagues at the back of the house were beaten and kicked. But as police drew their batons, the fighting spread all around the house.
The trouble broke out at the funeral of Kieran Fleming. He was drowned 3 weeks ago trying to swim a river to the Irish Republic after a gun battle with security forces.
The trouble began even before Kieran Fleming's coffin left his family's home in the predominantly Republican Gobmascale estate. Mourners and police jostled, then the crowd attacked with stones, bottles and sticks. The police moved in with batons, and as the disturbance spread through the estate, several people were arrested but let go almost immediately. Bricks and paving slabs were also thrown at the security forces. Despite appeals for calm from leading members of Sinn Féin who were among the mourners, the violence continued. The police responded by baton charging the crowd. Changed direction several times on its way through the city centre as the security forces blocked off its intended route. An Irish flag was draped over the coffin. Then, in the dusk, masked men appeared from the crowd and fired a volley of shots before disappearing quickly into the bogside. Afterwards, Kieran Fleming was buried in the Republican plot in the city cemetery.
The Michael Wayne family home at Knocknatscullion near Scottstown was the setting for an IRA show of strength. Hundreds had gathered at the remote hillside farm for the funeral of IRA killer Seamus Michael Wayne. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of a UDR corporal and a policeman. But one of 38 IRA prisoners who escaped from the Maze prison in September 1983, Michael Wayne fled to the Republic. According to the IRA, it was well known in the Monaghan bordered area that Michael Wayne was still deeply involved in the IRA. 3 of the masked and uniformed group which flanked the hearse moved to one side and fired a volley of shots from pistols before the cortege finally left for the church 2 miles away in Scottstown.
We're reporting, well, Seamus Michael Wayne was one of 38 Republicans who tried to escape from the Maze prison 2.5 years ago. Since then, he's been on the run throughout the time. His death means there are now 12 Maze escapers who are still at large.
They came from all over Ireland's border country to honour a man these people hold as a local hero, the most notorious IRA gunman since the hunger striker Francis Hughes. County Monaghan's a Republican stronghold, and the death of Seamus McElwain is deeply felt. Over the coffin, shots suddenly rang out.
The paramilitary display was at McIlwain's funeral in County Monaghan this afternoon.
Led by a lone piper, 9 masked IRA members, including 2 women, as well as uniformed members of the Young Fianna, flanked the coffin of the man the IRA described as a courageous soldier. The tricolour and black flags flew at half-mast all along the funeral route as hundreds more waited to join the cortege.
Military trappings at the funeral of Gerard Loeb was 2 hours late, leaving his home at Rose Court in the Waterside's Gobnascale estate.
By 9 o'clock this morning, the police were out in strength in Gobnascale. Most of them were in riot gear. At one stage, 75 Land Rovers were counted as the funeral made its slow progress from Gobnascale across the river to Long Tower Church. By this time, the number of people in the cortege had grown. While the police stayed outside the church grounds, the paramilitary display was held to the cheers of onlookers. As the funeral continued, there were minor scuffles between mourners and the police.
It was not until the funeral had crossed Craigavon Bridge that the tricolour was put on the coffin, but the real show of paramount, the tricolour, berry and gloves were placed on the coffin, and 2 hooded guns and fired a dozen shots in the air. As the onlookers cheered the gesture of defiance, the gunmen disappeared again, and police did not make any move. There were minor scuffles between police and mourners as the procession continued to the city cemetery, but no serious incidents.